He's checking.
All right, I'm going to step out, do some tear down. I'll step back in.
Step back in. Tell the staff to stop by.
Ask some hard questions.
I don't know what a hard question is. All right. Uh, I think we're finally live. And so today we're doing, this is our actually first Connect with the Coastline of the year. We try to do about 3 or 4 of them throughout the year, just because as people come in, we want people to get connected. I think church is more than just, the 70 minutes that happens on a Sunday. And so try to use this as an opportunity for people to get connected, ask questions they couldn't normally ask if they're just coming for the 70 minutes on a Sunday. And so we'll kind of go through a little bit of the history of Coastline and Erica and I, and then we'll talk a little bit about kind of what we believe. And if you guys get questions along the way, I mean, it's super informal, and we're just gonna have kind of a conversation.
And our friends watching online, you guys can type any questions you have in the chat, and TJ and our team will read those to us, and we will answer them as well. So don't be afraid to ask questions. We're super open, as Elizabeth said, so
So Eric and I have been together for 12 years now. I think we've been married for
I don't know.
Been married for 10.
We've been together a long time.
Been married for a while.
13, I think, now.
13,
I'm not sure.
13 and 11 or something like that.
I feel like I've lost count.
2011, that's when we got married. But we've been in ministry since we've been married. Eric and I were we were youth pastors for a number of years. Helped out in some kids ministry and stuff like that. Ended up becoming campus pastors and kind of helping leading a broadcast campus. And then in 2017, just felt like God was calling us to take the next step. And so we had some friends and family, probably about 15 people or so that we had kind of gathered around us and said, hey, we're going to plant Coastline Church. And so we're actually Volusia County natives, so we've been here our entire life, which is that's not something you hear a whole lot of. Normally, it's, churches and our church planters, they go out and plant somewhere else. But after years of traveling around and stuff, and I spent some time in Georgia and kind of been around the world doing mission trips and stuff like that. There's something about coming back home that I just couldn't get kind of out of my blood. It just really felt like this is kind of where God called me. Also helps too that we're big beach people. I love to fish, and Ponce Inlet and New Smyrna Beach and Mosquito Lagoon is like used to be redfish capital of the world. So it's kind of one of those things where like the things that we love to do and the people that we love are all in one place. And so it just makes sense to try to introduce people to Jesus where we've kind of been planted. So it's 2017 we started. We were really pumped and excited, and probably had no idea what we were actually getting into. It was the first time we did church plant. And so I remember like sitting down with some of our board guys, our core team, trying to figure out like, okay, what do we actually need? And like next thing you know, we had like a price list and like all the tools and stuff that was like base. It was like $40,000, and it could have been $4 million. We didn't have anything at the time, and so we just prayed and said, God, if this is something you want us to do, then you'll do it. And I think like within a week, somehow we had raised $40,000 and went out and bought a trailer and some kids ministry stuff and some sound equipment, and we were off to the races. And even with that, it was one of those things that we had. That was compared to what we see now for planting a church. You got churches that are doing church plants at like $1 million or north of that. I talked to some of my buddies that are also church planters. They're like, dude, the fact that you're still around is an absolute miracle because you had no idea what you were doing, and what you did it with was like
backing either. Because
we planted just on our own. We had attended a church. So we had been a part of a church that was called the Beachside Church for a number of years. Now you probably know them around town as Salty Church. So Eric and I both actually grew up in Ormond Beach, which is about 35 miles north of here. And so we had come down into New Smyrna for like date night and stuff like that, and me for fishing and stuff. We always loved the little beach town that we came down in. So planting here was definitely the part where we're like, hey, if we're going to do this, we want to do it in New Smyrna Beach. So it was a God thing that we even got off the ground. Day one of our launch actually got canceled because of hurricane. And so we had like planned, we had done soft launch, and we had gotten like 3 or 4 months in, and then the day of that, we had like told the whole community about like, this is when we're starting, this is where we're starting. Didn't happen because of the hurricane, and on top of that, like the place that we had met actually kind of got like messed up because of the hurricane. And so,
Damage. Yeah.
so for like, they're like, you can't meet here for the next 3 weeks. We're like, well, we just told everybody this is where.
Yeah.
And so really, when we got started, it was like a miracle. If you could find Coastline, you could come. But every week we had to go to these different places. So, no, yeah, it was very high stress. But the cool thing about it was, it was all part of God's plan. If it hadn't been for that hurricane, actually, we wouldn't be at the high school where we're at now. We were in a little place called Coronado Elementary on the beach side, and when that hurricane happened, there was a pastor in a church that was meeting in New Smyrna Beach High School, and he came to me and said, "Man, so I feel God's calling to go back to Georgia, where I'm from," and he's like, I just so happens I've got a connection with New Smyrna Beach High School. I've got some tools and stuff like that. I just want to give them to you and let you guys do what God's calling you to do in New Smyrna. And at first, it was kind of like one of those things, like, oh, this is cool. And then we didn't realize, like, into it was like he gave us like a truck. He gave us a 30-foot trailer. His church years ago had like gone to a company called Church in a Box, which all they do is put together.
So if you see those things behind us, they're those
all the black rolly boxes and stuff. And so like where we had like pieced things together and like built carts for stuff, he had like all of it and like didn't. I was like, well, how much do you want for it? He's like, no. He's like, this is kingdom stuff. We're just gonna keep giving it to the kingdom. And so it was from the start. Coastline is like all the plans that we had like didn't ever work out, and so it's really just been a faith thing of like God keeps showing up, and so that's kind of what we live by. We kind of we have some plans. We kind of I pray and ask God to show me some vision, and I'll cast big vision. But ultimately, man, what God's been able to do is beyond what I've been able to think of, and that's it actually works out where you talked about stress. Like we don't really have a whole lot of stress even as church planners or as pastors or leaders of the church, because God showed up all along the way. And so like if I'm the one providing or whatever, there's something to worry about. But like I'm like, well, God's working it out. I'm just showing up. So it's really worked out cool. So we've been going now for 4 years.
Yeah.
And we plant Coastline. Biggest thing, we wanted to make sure, there's so many great churches in the area, and even with how many churches we have, I think there's something like 60,000 or 60. It was either 60 or 66,000 people between New Smyrna Beach, Edgewater, Oak Hill, and Samsula. That's kind of like the 4-city area that we're trying to reach. Of those 66,000, there's only like 6,000 that are actually attending a church. So you're talking about 10%. There's 90% of people that are out there that just, don't go to church at all. And probably because of COVID, it's probably more than that now too, because there's been some drop off. And so when we started Coastline, we said, man, there's so many great churches. We don't want to just be another church that reaches church people. I think reaching church people is good, but you got 90% of the population that is unchurched or dechurched. And so when we launched Coastline, we really wanted to be a church that was comfortable for those people to come into. So like, at Coastline, we probably don't use a whole lot of like churchy terms, or if I do use I don't even know what you would call a churchy term.
Tithes.
Yeah, like
sure.
yeah, eschatology or whatever. Yeah, but a lot of the vocabulary and stuff that we use is something that we would hope that someone who has never stepped in church, or maybe they were at church at some point and they stepped away from church, if they were come back to Coastline, or if they're coming back to church at Coastline, they would still feel comfortable and understand what we were kind of talking about. So we're a church that are trying to reach unchurched and dechurched people specifically. That's not all the people we have, though. It's we've got tons of church people. We just want to we want those people to understand that, hey, we live on mission, and that mission is to help people find Jesus, help people come back to Jesus.
Right, and that really stems from who we are as
Yeah.
people, because that's our story. So for me, I was actually an unchurched person. I did not grow up going to church, and so I really began my relationship with the Lord when I was 19. So for the most part of my life, I would be considered an unchurched person. So I really identify with the people who didn't grow up going to church every Sunday,
Didn't get invited, and
yeah, so I never went to like children's ministry or youth group or anything like that. So for me, it's important, and I really stand for those people who have never set foot inside of a church. And Brian comes from
I came from the kind of the opposite side of that. But before I get into that, real quick, hey Kayla, I know this is Kayla Q. Kayla handles all of our worship stuff, and puts the team and stuff together.
Yeah, come on. Right.
Kayla's been around.
Hello. It's Kayla.
How long have you been with us now? Like 3 years?
3.5.
3.5 or so?
Yeah.
This will be my, I think, 4th Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here.
So Kayla moonlights as a hairdresser.
She's
right?
in hair school.
In hair
Yep.
school.
Soon
and
to be coming at you.
Soon to be
hairstylist.
hairstylist.
Yeah.
But she's been killing it and been a great part of the team for past 3.5 years. And the team that her and TJ have been able to build are super strong. They're way better than what we started out with, which was pretty much me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been
So,
a journey.
Thanks for all you do. I appreciate you.
Love you.
Yeah.
And then it's TJ. You kind of saw him. He was messing with computer stuff. Come over here for a second, buddy.
His favorite.
TJ
he loves
is-
to be in front of people
TJ,
and the
what's
center
your,
of attention.
Creative arts director is his
Creative-
title.
Yeah.
We don't really go a whole lot on titles, but he does all the tech stuff. So anything like online, anything graphics, anything video, anything visual, pretty much if it's not preaching, he's helping with it. And he's very musically inclined. You saw him on stage this past week. He helps lead with Kayla the musical aspect of all this stuff. So
Website.
he's also my brother-in-law. So some people have a question of like, well, what about nepotism? We have like reverse nepotism. So
Meaning
it's not
he
really.
is married to your sister. He's not my brother, which is what everyone
He
thinks.
looks like he could be
So,
your brother,
I
though.
know. People, when you say that, they think that we're brother and sister. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
right. A lot of people do. We both have like
So me and
fair
TJ's
skin.
TJ's wife is my sister. Her name's Megan.
Yeah.
Also a hairstylist. I don't know.
Yes.
We've got
Lots of
you're a
those.
hairstylist.
All right.
Everybody's a hairstylist. So yeah. So I came from unchurched background,
walked away.
which was pretty much Mom had us in church growing up our entire lives, and I actually went through Bible college and do what? So after high school, I went into a program called Master's Commission, which in the late '90s, early 2000s, it was out of Phoenix University, but it was like online and partnered with churches and the Assemblies of God across America. So I think at one time they had something like 1,500 of them or something crazy. It was nuts. And so the one I went to was in Orlando at Faith Assembly of God. It's a big church now of probably 15,000 people or something like that. It's very big. So I was there for 3 years as a 3-year program. And so as we worked at the church, which was kind of like an internship, we also did
Like on the job training.
yeah, because it was like 24 hours a day for 9 months. It was very intense, but it was great. It was some of the things, a lot of the stuff that we did there is what I apply in ministry now. I remember I was part of the setup and teardown team because they met in a gymnasium, and I vowed, I was like, I'm never doing setup and teardown ever again. God said, well, let's see how that works out.
And then one summer they were redoing the auditorium here, so we had to go to the gym.
Yeah,
he
so it was
really
a
felt
lot
like
of
it was
memories,
like a full circle
lot of
moment for
memories.
Brian there.
Yeah. But no, so I came out of that, took my first job in Georgia, and it was with a good friend of mine. He was actually my youth pastor when I grew up, so he was the guy that discipled me. And unfortunately, I saw him go through a very tough time in which church people hurt church people. It was one of those things where it was a smaller church, and saw some things said and saw some things done that at a very impressionable time in my life and ministry and me beginning ministry, it kind of did some damage. And so I, took probably, 9 months to a year off, and I worked a construction job. I didn't do ministry. I kind of just stepped away and tried to figure out, what's my faith based off of my relationship with Jesus, not based off of church people. And shortly thereafter, God got a hold of me and said, hey, dude, I didn't, that's great that you're doing construction, but that's not what I called you to. And so you can keep doing this, and you'll survive, but you ain't going to live the life I called you to. So really, it took a buddy calling me up and kind of calling me out. And I showed up at church and the next week, and he asked me to play in the band. And I happened to see a pretty blonde girl that was sitting on the sidewall worshiping Jesus, and it was just one thing after another after that. So it was kind of one of those things where I wasn't trying to get back into ministry. God just worked it out that way. And so I volunteered, and the next thing you know, I was secretary for a worship leader for a little bit, which that's and one thing led to another, and today I'm a pastor of a church in New Smyrna. So so I kind of come from an unchurched background. Erica comes D-church. Yeah. Erica comes from unchurched, and so together we both kind of are sensitive to people that would walk in to Coastline from either one of those backgrounds. Obviously, because I also grew up in church, I understand how church people work too, so that helps out. But yeah, so when we planted Coastline, we said, we felt like there was probably 3 pillars that we wanted to, make sure that we really, attach ourselves to, or 3 anchors when it comes to our beliefs and following of Christ. The first one is that, I think when it comes to church and being a follower of Christ, you should connect. There's connection with God that should happen. We should love Him with all. And Jesus says we should love our neighbors as we love ourselves, so there's connection with each other. And so it really is this living life in relationship with God and with God's people. And so in anything that we do at Coastline, whether it's even this or a service or one of our groups, we spend time connecting with God, whether it's in the Word or through prayer. We're going to spend some time connecting with one another and doing, something social and challenging and helping out each other. The second thing that we thought was important is we believe that, we should grow. Things that are healthy grow. And that doesn't necessarily speak to like numbers-wise, but spiritually. You see even in the world that we live in, things that are, I love my kids. I think if they're going to be healthy, we're going to experience them growing over time. That's what should happen. I think that's what God wants to see with us spiritually. There's not a point at which I hope Ben just stays where he's at, and run around in his underwear the rest of his life. That would be, I'd miss out as a father. He'd miss out as a son. I think it's the same thing for us. Is that him right there?
No, it's Nash. It's Nash.
It's the same thing, I think, spiritually, God with us. God wants to see us grow. I think if we grow spiritually and we grow individually, and I think our church will grow as well. And I don't hope that Coastline gets big for the sake of being a big church. I do hope that Coastline grows just because I understand the percentage of, if you got 90% of our community that's not involved in church, man, I hope that there's a church out there that will help get those people connected to Christ, or reconnected. And the last one was our last anchor is, we tell people that part of being a follower of Christ is a call to action. And so we use the word go. So you got connect, you got grow, you got go. But really, it's kind of a lot of what I talked about today of when it comes to your faith, it's not so much about what you know, it's about what you do with it. And so the challenge for all of us is, whether it's the pastor or the tech guy or monk who runs the live stream or Elizabeth or even the guys that are tearing down the stage, we all have a call to live on mission, and the mission is to make disciples. And so whether it's me and preaching or these guys tearing down, especially on a weekend, we all have the same mission, and we all of us working together and putting it in action help people find Christ. And so we try to push people beyond the just sitting in the rows on a Sunday. I think attending church is a great thing, but being a part of a church family and putting your faith into action outside of that 70 minutes is really what it's a lot about. And so those are the kind of 3 anchors of what we do. I feel like I've been talking a lot. You guys got questions about any of this stuff? Or questions about our church? I think we started with about 15.
And then it grew a little bit.
Went 25. When we launched, like when we started doing soft launch,
50.
I think we had like 40 or 50 in on our first, we didn't tell people about service, but we had people knew. So a lot of it was
That includes people's kids.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
yeah.
we might have counted pregnant people too. I don't. You count as two. So but no, it was pretty small. We grew to somewhere around 200, 250 pretty quickly, and then when COVID hit, that adjusted pretty significantly. So I don't know what we had this past week.
Last week we had, including our online friends, over 200.
We had a
this past
couple
week,
hundred
yeah.
people. So we're really blessed with having the high school, especially with what happened with COVID. Because everyone can spread out. No one feels like kind of like on top of each other. Even with that stuff, we had started to make some plans to like find a place and like rent a place and like have a new permanent home that we could use throughout the week. And if we would have done that in the middle of COVID, it'd have been a bad time. So again, back to the whole faith thing, man. I'm trusting God's going to work it all out, man. So he's done it in the past. He's going to keep doing it. So, yes, sir. I have a board of, what do you call them? Board of elders, board of directors.
Elders?
We call them elders.
We call them elders.
Um,
You could call them whatever you want.
we
I
got
guess.
4. No, we just added 2 guys.
Don't
5 guys?
Danny, Chris, Alan, Ed. 5.
We got 5
plus you.
guys. I technically sit on the board, but there's some things obviously like I
You don't
don't
vote
have a
on,
say on
right.
or anything like that because of my position of being on staff at the church as well. So those guys help, keep me accountable. They ask tough questions. We meet once a month. They challenge me, also encourage me. I mean, these are also guys that help out significantly in the church, like with setup and tear down and stuff like that. They've been doing it for a number of years, and so they definitely have the heart of a servant, and they have our church's best interests at heart for sure. They come from different backgrounds too. A lot of them are we got a couple guys that are retired that ran big businesses. We got some guys that did construction, and we got some just recently we just added a guy that's got 3 small kids. We're trying to kind of hit all the demographics of our church. We have a surfer, we got some golf guys, we got some fishermen, but yeah. So we've got 5 guys, 6 including me, and those guys are on like a 2-year rotation. And so after 2 years, they can, if they want to, they can apply to re-up, one time. They get re-upped one time if the rest of the board votes on it, but it's a 2-term limit. We don't do any congregational voting, and that's primarily just because of how young of a church we were, and when we got started, we just didn't set up our bylaws that way. I know there's a lot of Baptist churches that do that. I've got some buddies that they handle an annual meeting, but most of our voting, and we don't really vote on a whole lot, even with that, is done by those 6 guys, or me and those 5 guys. Yep. So, but like Elizabeth said, I mean, we were definitely open book with our board, and if there was anyone that was a member or partner at Coastline that is involved, they could ask any question they wanted, financial or whatever. We'd be happy to answer it for them. So we don't have anything to hide. So, but yeah. What else?
So rolling into 2022, kicking off with COVID, 3 weeks. What's something that you think we could do better this year? What's on your list that as a church we can do better?
And just for our friends online, he asked, what can we do better into 2022 as a church?
Yeah, definitely. Right now, big thing that we're trying to push is community. Because of COVID, I mean, not just Coastline, but the church, Big C Church, community is the thing that has been attacked the most, because there's so much separation that's required now. There's people that, have fallen through the cracks, people that have not connected well or are still continuing to choose not to connect. And I think, there really is a spiritual aspect of this whole COVID thing. And, I think when we see even how Jesus did church, or how he did his ministry, it was involved in community. He had 12 guys around him. He had three guys that were his close knit group, and they did life together. And there's not a whole lot of that happening right now. And so we actually just relaunched our groups this past, was it 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks. Some of them started.
I was
2
out
weeks
on
ago.
COVID, so I
Some
wasn't
of
sure.
them started 1 week ago.
So we launched, I think, two or three new ones, and all of them have about 10 to 12 people that are going to it. But really, I would hope that would be kind of something we put our foot on the gas and allow to grow this next year. Also, we're this past year we finished up a giving campaign that we were trying to raise $50,000 for a common area space. We actually hit it.
Yep.
So
We
hit
went
it right
a
at
little
the end
bit
of the
over.
year.
Yep.
A little bit over. And so right now the board and I are looking around for what space would be good to try to have as a common area. And also we're praying through with what we spend at the high school and what we've got in savings, and for what the future holds, if there might be opportunity to find something that we can use beyond just the weekend. I love high school. We've got a great relationship with them, and especially even our liaison, the guy that we're connected with each and every week. And we could be here for the next 10 years, but there is also a thing in the back of my mind of we spend a lot of money for a place that we don't get to have during the week.
Right, 4 hours on 1 day a week.
Yeah, and so to be able to have something that a place where the youth can meet, or where you might have a circle group that wants to meet but they don't have a host home or something like that they can meet in. That's definitely a desire God's kind of put on my heart. So we're just waiting for the right place to open up, and so we got a couple places in mind, but we haven't talked about it with the church yet. So we'll see what happens in the next couple months. So that's one. And then personally, one of the things that we've kind of gotten to over the past years, we've done a lot of planning for the year. Of this is the series, these are the next series we should do. This is, we're doing events and stuff like that. And I feel like with COVID, one of the things it's kind of forced us to do is to, rely on God and kind of live in the moment a little bit more. There's a lot of, that verse I talked about this week of, we can make plans, but ultimately God's going to direct our path. To be diligent of living in that moment and doing ministry then and now, getting away from church, the science of church or whatever, the formula, and so back to the whole, it's not about what you know, it's about what you do. So, so really living a lot by faith this year, of just relying on God to open the doors, and we're going to be continue to be obedient, stepping through them when the time comes, despite risk or fear or whatever. We can continue to live by faith. So, what else we got? It can be about business. It can be anything.
Is this basically a fivefold ministry church then? I take it.
I'm not sure what that means. So you probably have to explain to me fivefold ministry.
Apostles, prophets, evangelists, teachers.
Yeah, I don't think we have that as structured as much. I would, so obviously I would be the chief teacher, but I think our leaders of our circle groups, they have a similar responsibility to teach, and we have leaders in as far as our staff or whatever that would hold them accountable of what they're teaching and stuff like that, and trying to make even help provide them with content of what's being taught. But when it comes down to, I would say I don't know fully to define what that fivefold ministry would be. I would say as far as how you see the early church and Acts and stuff like that, how it's developed, I would say I would agree with that. If it's in the Bible, but I don't think we have. We're probably too young of a church to say we've developed all those pieces, all five of those. So. I would say we'd have to spend some time defining the fivefold ministry first. I'd be happy to sit down and talk about it though. So, yeah, I don't think there'd be a lot we would disagree on. about it. I think the responsibilities of it. But yeah. What else we got? Am I missing anything?
The only other thing that I wanted to make sure we touched on today is that as a church, Coastline, we support 7 different ministries. So everything that comes in here at Coastline, we send 12% of it back out, and we support 7 different missions. 3 are here locally, and 3 are international as well. So here locally, we support Frog Ministries, which is in Edgewater. It's a completely free resource center for people to store. They come in, they can get clothes, small appliances, and everything is free. So we support them. We also support Bridging the Gap, which is also located in Edgewater, and they're a resource center that helps people mostly with food, but also other things as well. So there's some people that are on fixed income, people that have lost their jobs, and so they're helping them bridge the gap between, being completely homeless, completely, hungry, whatever it is, they support that as well. And the third one being the Open Doors Counseling Network, which has an office in Port Orange and Daytona Beach as well. And they provide Christian professional counseling on a sliding scale. So it's affordable for everyone. So we help them. They support a lot of veterans as well. They specialize in veteran care among a lot of other things, but we support them. So they help subsidize the pricing there. Or if people just can't afford it at all, they do provide the care as well.
There's a fourth one as well. It's also local called Young Life, which Young Life is a parachurch ministry, specifically reach out to public high schools and trying to get kids connected to Christ and also plugged into churches. And so obviously with the size of our church and us not having a permanent facility, it's tough to do youth ministry. So we actually direct all of our youth ministry to Young Life, and they help provide youth ministry actually for a bunch of other churches in the area as well. And so the guy who preached last week, Rick Hilliard, I talked to a little bit. He's the guy that's directing it. So he's doing a fantastic job. And then
Sorry, I misspoke. We have 2 international missions.
2 internationals. One of them is Colin Dennis Leon from Costa Rica. They preached a couple weeks ago, or he did preach a couple weeks ago. And the other one is
Elizabeth and Dave.
Elizabeth and Dave in Haiti. So Elizabeth, who you guys met, her and her husband Dave have a mission in Haiti for helping out. It's like
it's a malnutrition center.
Yeah, so they're doing a lot of education and stuff like that and helping. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So they have a separate board, and they go down. I think she was just down 2 weeks ago.
She was at the beginning of January.
Yep. And they've got a full staff that run it full time while they're not there. So they're actually in the middle of finishing up their actually building process. So
Right.
they're I think they're like 90% complete or something like that. So it's a big deal. Yeah, so that's probably one of the things that we need to do a better job of communicating on. So when I use the term circle groups, that would be our small groups. Or we're working on using just groups itself. But we started using circle groups out of I think that's what Andy Stanley calls his groups.
Yes.
But the idea is, people do great in learning in a row, but we want to challenge people to grow beyond that row, get into a circle, and grow with
Hi.
each other.
The last 2 questions, one, I was telling them about Haiti, which involves you, and the second one was about groups, which also involves you. So I wanted to introduce you guys. You've probably already met Elizabeth, but
Yep.
that is what she does here at Coastline. She is our Connections and Community Director. So that means that she is in charge of all small groups, creating community, getting people plugged into serving groups, and as well as outreach programs here locally as well.
So we've got groups that meet that are interest-based. Like I do a fishing group called Real Talk, where we get together and we talk about fishing. We do a Bible study afterwards. We've got groups that are meeting in homes that all they're doing is just a Bible study. We've got moms groups. We've got a group of ladies that does coffee every Thursday,
Wednesday.
every Wednesday. They'll get together and they'll do a small Bible study.
They're doing a study on Psalms 91 and learning how to pray through that.
Yeah.
psalm.
So the cool thing is because we don't have a facility, we've kind of created this nomadic type thing where we got groups that meet throughout the week, throughout the city, and even different cities. I think we got one in Ormond. Isn't your group meet?
Yeah.
And how would you describe it? Is that young people?
Young adults.
Young adults. So So throughout Volusia County, on almost every day of the week, we got something meeting. So
Yes.
yeah.
We have a ladies
Speak of the devil.
only group that does
Well, not
Zoom.
that's terrible. That's a terrible phrase or whatever. So
Hey.
this is Doug Davis. Doug Davis is technically, Sunbiz would say he's the vice president of our organization, but he's just one of the elders. Sits on the board. He's been part
The
of
original elder.
me and Doug have been together for years, but he's kind of my right hand of anything that goes on Coastline. He's also him and his wife lead probably our most successful online Zoom group, and they Wednesdays at 6. Is that what you're doing? Got it this time. Last week I was still post-COVID, so. But Wednesdays at 6, they get a great group that gets together and they do Bible study. And he's been talk about like discipleship and stuff. He's done a great job of actually identifying people in his group that could be potential leaders and stuff like that are also leading their group. So yeah.
Perfect timing.
So what started out as he's been a workhorse for many years here at Coastline. He's doing a great job of actually discipling and identifying future leaders and stuff. So appreciate all you do, buddy. Appreciate you. Yeah. So and then his wife Patty Lee Davis, is kind of the matriarch of Coastline. Pretty much, if something's going down, she knows about it and she's helping people through it. So yeah. If there was an executive pastor, she could probably be it. So, but yeah,
TJ
cracks the whip. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, if there ever was a difficult question or whatever you wanted to ask about, or where's the money go, or was anything like that, I mean, we got some great guys on the board that would be happy to talk to you about it, or you could ask me about it at any point. We really are kind of an open book. We don't have a whole lot to. There's not a whole lot to hide or behind anything. So anything ever comes up, you're welcome to approach me about it. Yeah. So, and then the good thing is, especially with Doug and the rest of the board, the church really does have great resources, and asking them and talking to them about stuff as well. All those guys, they know everything, the ins and outs of everything that goes on, and are very competent guys. So, all right.
guys have any more questions?
This is kind of tough for me, but I believe I really have a word for both.
Okay.